Greetings, all. This is Max. We're going to talk one more time about what some people say is interracial marriage is a sin. And this will probably be the last time I talk about it. I can't say forever in the future, but I'm pretty much kind of done with it right now because the only person that I know that teaches that is a man named Brian Denlinger. Maybe Peter Ruckman taught it. I don't know, because Peter Ruckman hides behind a paywall, and the man's dead now. He lived a good, full, long life and created a whole lot of great Bible teachings. But I don't understand where Brian is pulling this out of the Bible. So now I'm not disregarding comments on my channel, okay? I'm not like some of these other people here, some of these little posers who are afraid of anything, comments disabled for the video, afraid of anybody who disagrees. And they refuse to hear anybody else's opinion, or even if they slam dunk them, they refuse. I just don't have time for you, but you're supposed to watch my channel. The funniest one is this one. Husky394XP, salvation message. Well, I'd like to watch that. Let's watch the salvation message. Okay. I don't know. I have a question about what I must do to be saved. Oh. And you call yourselves pastors. Man. Really going out on a limb with that one. So anyways, we're going to go back to, I'll give Vote for Trump his little minute here. Whether or not you're biased with family or interracial marriages should not play a part in this discussion. Well, yes, it should. Me saying it's retarded or it's idiotic is not an argument. I had an argument. You're just pulling out where I said that is really stupid and ignorant. I think it was ignorant, I said, not idiotic. I said it was ignorant. It's childish. Hey, I speak the way that I speak. I calls them as I sees them. Fact of the matter is, race does exist. No, it doesn't. That is a totally made-up word. A completely made-up word. We're all people. If you want to say the scientific human beings, whatever. We're all just people. And we're all related to Adam, Eve, and Noah. That's, if you believe the Bible, that's all there is to it. That means we're all related. It is not merely skin color. God chose the Jewish race, a peculiar people. Races differ by DNA. Well, yes, God chose the Jews, but they're still related to Adam and Eve. Statistically, races have different skeletal structure, intelligence, athletic ability, cultural preferences, susceptibility to disease. The list never ends. All men are created in God's image, but that does not mean we are all the same. I never said that we were all the same. Not once. We are all the same in belief in Christ, if you believe in Christ. But we are all the same genetically. We are all the same. We all come from the same parents. Whether you want to believe that or not, whatever. I'm just talking about Christianity here. And I'll go into science in a little bit. My response, as far as races go, it is Jews and everybody else. Yeah, that's the Old Testament. It's the Jews and the Gentiles. Not, it's the Asians, the Philistines, the Jewish people. No. You have the Jewish people and everybody else on the planet. And they were told not to intermingle, specifically because everybody was getting into paganism. And they all forgot about God. Why that happened? I don't know. You had that whole Tower of Babel thing, and God split everybody up and changed the language around. People develop their own gods. With the resurrection of Christ, there is no longer a distinction. Christian Jews are the same as Christian Gentiles. Also, geneticists have proven that, I think I messed that up, that it's supposed to say that we all come from the same mother, regardless of race. You shouldn't need a science paper to understand this. Read Genesis 1. And yeah, it's Genesis 3. I'm sorry. Messed it up. You're not operating in reality. Crime scene investigators determine race based on skeletal structure on a regular basis. Well, who cares? Who cares what crime scene people do? You know, if I was born like in Australia where the Aborigines are, and I grew up with Aborigines, guess what? My skin color might be different, but my bone structure would probably be the same as theirs because I'm eating the same diet. I'm doing the same things as the Aborigines are doing. Because of adaptation. To suggest all people are the same is ludicrous. Well, people are not the same, but people are all related. And to suggest otherwise is ludicrous. And I'm going to go on further to say that God blesses people marrying outside of their race and family. And I'm going to do that with the Old Testament. But God doesn't want close relations between tight families and stuff like that. Continuing on. All people share the same DNA, but express different portions based on lineage, mutation, and adaptation. My bad, it was Genesis 3:20. So to be perfectly clear, you now believe that we are all descendants of Eve and Noah's family. And that DNA determines, vote for Trump, and that DNA determines race, which includes a myriad of differences outside of just skin color. But it's all just adaptation. All of that code is already in your DNA. If it wasn't, you couldn't get a suntan if you're a white person. It's one of those things. Of course, I believe we aren't descendants of Adam and Noah. That doesn't mean that we are all the same race. I keep hearing people say we're all one human race, the human race, and that's a stupid cliche. They must have got it from the con man. Kent Hovind. Of course, they are all human. Racial diversity within humanity is a reality. Personally, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in anything that we are different people. We are all in the image of God. We all come from Adam and Eve, and more recently, Noah. Everybody on the planet. Noah and his 3 sons. That's where we come from. We're all related. We're all people. We have different cultures, and that is all. People are all related, which is why we are brothers and sisters in Christ. Okay, so that's the comment. People are obviously really ticked that they like the racism thing that Denlinger's got going on. Scientifically proven, mitochondrial Eve. Scientifically proven that we all come from one mother. Through studying the female generation mitochondria, all the way back to the original one. And then science is poo-pooing it now because the creationists had a field day with it because it was called mitochondrial Eve. But if they just would have said it was, we can all trace ourselves back to a certain ancestor in Africa, then no one would have a problem with it. But they called it mitochondrial Eve. And Christians already know it's true. We're going to go on here with DNA among humans the same. How much DNA do we share with each other? DNA survey finds all humans are 99.9% the same. And they don't fully understand DNA yet. They can't create it in a laboratory. They can't do anything with it. It's God's. It's God's gene. God's stuff. But we're all the same. And they say up here in one of these articles when they're trying to poo-poo it, it says that we're somewhere between 99 and 99.9%. Somewhere between there with the poo-poo article. But didn't they say that about chimpanzees too? Didn't they say that about chimpanzees? It all has to do with what the expression is in your chromosomes and in your DNA and in your lineage and adaptation to your environment, because God created your body so perfect that they can actually adapt to whatever environment you're thrown into if you're just given a little bit of time to adapt. That doesn't mean evolution, by the way. Genesis 3:20 that I brought up. And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. And God's talking about people there. He ain't talking about everything else. He's talking about people. So you're going to tell me that there's some wild DNA difference. And where did that come from? Wild DNA difference between the different races of the world. I'll just go with it and say, okay. Yeah, okay, we'll just say there's a wild DNA difference. Okay. Whatever. You got this little problem called Leviticus, where the DNA is starting to mutate and starting to break down, and it's not as good as it was anymore after the flood. And there's a lot of speculation on that. But this is where you can no longer mess around with your sister or your aunt or anybody close anywhere in relation to your family by blood. It goes through the whole thing of every single thing of any family member close to you. Does that not say, more or less, that you should almost find somebody who is completely not even... they couldn't possibly be related to you in any way? You know, generations back, I guess. I mean, of course, we're all related. But doesn't it say, like, you should probably find somebody who's a stranger from another land or something, just to make sure that you're not messing with Leviticus? I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's thou shalt not uncover of every single thing having to do with incest all the way back to cousins. And that's where that law comes from. And it's because God understood that genetics are breaking down, and the more you intermingle, they can't cope with it. And people who were living for 1,000 years, and then now they're living for, 80. In Leviticus, it was still like 100 or 2, but it's a lot less than what it was, and that's the genetic breakdown of the DNA that started happening after the flood. And we're going to look at Romans. I'm going to read a bit of this. Now, we're out of the Old Testament. We're into the New Testament. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Be not conformed to this world. Isn't racism conforming to the world? Do little children, before they go to school and you put them in daycare, do they know the difference between the races? Do they understand that? No, it's worldly. It's a worldly teaching that there is a difference in the races. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly according to as God hath dealt to every man the measure of his faith. Unless you're Asian or black or white, then it's different measure of faith. Something like that. For we have as many members in one body, and all members have not the same office. So we, being many, are one body in Christ, and every one members one of another. So we're all members of one of another. But people like Brian are going to tell you that no. If you're in a different culture and you come to Christ, then you can't marry another Christian. It's nowhere in the Bible. Skin color isn't mentioned in the Bible. You have Jews and Gentiles, those two. What does the Bible say about interracial marriage? This is from BibleInfo.com. I'm not endorsing the site. I'm just telling you where I'm getting a thing to explain it a little bit differently with somebody else's words than my own. All right, what does the Bible say about interracial marriage? An important Bible verse about understanding interracial marriage is 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. The last word, unbelievers, is of key importance. A Christian should not marry a non-Christian no matter how kind or good they are. We're going to go to that verse. 2 Corinthians 6:14. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship have righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? So it doesn't say in there about nations or anything else or culture or whatever. You can be of two different cultures. And the Jews did it all the time. When they took over a town or something like that, they would marry whoever they wanted to, but they convert them to Judaism. And that was Solomon's problem. All right? Solomon was the wisest man on earth. Solomon did not heed to God saying, don't intermingle with pagan Gentiles. He didn't say just Gentiles. I believe it was always a pagan thing that was always there. Ruth wasn't a pagan. She was brought up by Malachi. She was brought up in the Jewish tradition. She just happened to be a Gentile. Solomon, in the act of gathering territory and making peace agreements with all these different nations, had something like 1,000 wives from all these different places, and he didn't convert them to Judaism. He started actually building temples to their idols to appease them. That was the problem, and Solomon even talked about that. It had nothing to do with their skin color. Do you think all those wives were all from the same, they're all Jews? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Bottom line is, we are all of one body, all relatives, all have the same basic DNA. And now that you're in Christ, it makes no difference what your skin color is. And I would say that if you come to Christ, it doesn't matter what your different cultures are either. There is nothing wrong if you're a Korean or a Native American celebrating your own culture and going to your own holidays and your own stuff and gathering with your family for whatever feast day that you have and being a Christian. And there's nothing wrong with marrying, some guy in America who doesn't have any of that, who just happens to be a Christian, as long as you're equally yoked. And if you're both Christians and you both have the same ideas on doctrine, you're equally yoked. And with that, I'm out of here.